My name is Zoe, and I'm the writer at 1:17 a.m. And I feel. Thank you. And yeah, I feel incredibly honoured to be sitting next to David Eldridge. I kind of started thinking about 1:17 a.m. after seeing Beginnings by David Eldridge when it transferred to the West End, actually. And so yeah, it feels really, really meaningful that you're here today for me as a writer. So yeah, a quick intro for anyone that doesn't know about David. David Eldridge's plays include the thing that I'm keen to talk about, the trilogy, Beginning, Middle and End, as well as Market Boy at the National Theatre, The Spy Who Came In Through the Cold. Is that still running?
It's finished at Soho Place, but it's about to go on tour.
Great. The Spy Who Came Through the Cold by the novel, obviously adapted from John le Carré's novel, and Holy Warriors at Shakespeare's Globe. Miss Julie and the Lady from the Sea, new versions from Ibsen, at the Royal Exchange, Manchester. In Basildon, Incomplete and Random Acts of Kindness and Under the Blue Sky at the Royal Court and the West End. M.A.D. What do you call it that? How do you call it?
M.A.D.
Yeah, M.A.D. And Serving It Up at the Bush. The Knot of the Heart and Festen at the Almeida. Yeah. Great. And many, many, many others. I could keep going, but including some of his first plays at the Finborough, which is really cool. Writing to Brass and A Week with Tony. He is a senior lecturer in creative writing at Birkbeck College, University of London, and he also writes for radio and TV. And his original four-part drama series Betrayal, which I am loving, by the way, is currently available to watch right now.
Yeah, it's available to stream on ITVX.
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, I guess I selfishly want to kick this off with my experience of watching Beginnings, which I was working in reality TV at the time in my day job, and then I was writing plays at night. And I remember, like maybe many of you who also saw the trilogy, I remember just being so profoundly struck by the simplicity of it, and I found it so moving. And just the simplicity of watching two people try and forge a connection in real time. And you always, I don't know if this is too bold of me to say, but I feel like you already had a rep before the trilogy as kind of being a naturalistic writer, whatever that means. But am I right in thinking that Beginning was your first properly closed-time, closed-space play?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. That's the first play that I'd written like that. I just want to take a step back though, because we're both writers and we've seen your play. You're incredibly sweet about my work, but it's a beautiful and extraordinary play. Thank you very much, and I feel very honoured to be with you this afternoon.
Oh,
so thank you.
Oh, cool. That's
The thing about Beginning is that it does really relate to why I've always why I wanted to be a playwright, and that is that believe it or not, the first play that I ever saw was King Lear, and it was an incredibly powerful and overwhelming emotional experience that I didn't anticipate at all. And I think that when you have experiences like that as an artist that affect you, there's part of you that wants to recreate them in your own version somehow, to sort of give back a strong emotional experience. So that's the first thing to say. And then a few years after that, when I was doing an English and drama degree at Exeter, maybe it was sort of just a bit that moment in theatre where the sort of new writing boom hadn't quite happened yet in London at the Royal Court and Bush and other places, people like Sarah Kane and so on and so forth. And I felt like I was constantly being told as a young drama undergrad that if you didn't break a fourth wall, that it wasn't theatre. And I remember thinking, even though I really didn't know my arse from my elbow, feeling incredibly patronised by that idea and angered by that idea. And I also sort of didn't really believe in lots of things that were said about somehow, that if you go and see a play that's in a realistic or naturalistic gesture, that somehow you're like these lobotomised children who suspend disbelief. Yeah, that really angered me, because I sort of thought whatever kind of play you go and see, you always know you're in a theatre.
Yeah.
It's just a different kind of play. And so those things have always been important to me. They have always sort of pulsed away, and I think, you know, it was probably in the late 90s, a friend of mine who went to a house party. Like, people always assume that beginning is about me and my wife and how we met, but it's not at all. It's actually happened to a mate of mine who's sort of he's a really nice guy. He looks a little bit like Phil Collins. He has got no radar.
Right. Yeah.
He just didn't realise this woman in this house fancied him. And it was just a funny story that happened to my mate, but weirdly, it just felt like that was the right thing to try and do this thing I'd always wanted to do.
Interesting, okay. So I was going to ask, did the characters come first or the form? But it feels like a bit of both.
Yeah, a bit of both.
Yeah.
Like, I'd always been in love as well with a German playwright, Franz-Xaver Crowitz, who was very trendy in the sort of in the 80s. His work was done at the Bush, the Royal Court, the RSC, like in translation. And they weren't close time, close space plays, but they were very naturalistic gestures. And I was really impressed by the rigour of them, but there weren't always that many jokes.
Yeah.
And I remember sort of thinking it'd be great to do a kind of a Crowitz with jokes. It was basically a kind of a thing. And I remember telling David Land at the Young Vic that I wanted to do something like that, and every time I bumped into him for a while, he said, "Oh, how's Crowitz with jokes going?"
Very good. Yeah, interesting. I mean, because my next question was I think you and I probably had similar experiences of being told that naturalistic work is not theatrical. I definitely, and that's what nice to be sitting next to someone who also feels that way. But yeah, I was gonna ask, like, how easy was it to get beginning on? Like, did you have a sense from buildings or directors that like kind of close time, close space naturalism was kind of boring, or something I've been told a lot, and I do also work in screen, like you're basically trying to do cinema, just like go and do telly, go and do screen.
Well, I just didn't engage with them in that way because beginning was written on spec.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't. I really did have the idea for years, for 20 years.
Wow.
And I just never ever did it, and the characters kept getting older and older and older. And I was meant to be on a TV job that I didn't end up doing, which I can't sort of talk about, particularly when I'm being recorded. I sort of didn't end up doing it, but had a few bob in my bank account, and I sort of thought, what am I going to do? And I thought there's that kind of Crowitz with jokes that I've always wanted to do. But of course, by then the characters were no longer sort of in their 20s. They were like me, knocking 40. And actually, that was quite good because it felt that the play sort of had higher stakes in a way, that there was more at stake for those characters when they were meeting.
Yeah, I really found that. I remember just being profoundly moved by how much it felt like they needed each other, and the second chance feeling so key. Okay, interesting. I mean, something that I have felt, that I wonder if you felt too, is that maybe close time, close space work is kind of similar to like the one take film. So stuff like kind of Victoria or Boiling Point, or the TV shows Adolescence, where they just all kind of shoot in one take. And obviously a screen, I'm sure we feel as playwrights, still has a bit of a distancing effect to an audience. But I would be interested to know what you think of kind of no cuts does. Like no scene transitions, or like no cuts in camera, like no scene transitions, no trickery. Do you think audiences are hungry for that? I mean, do you think about that kind of stuff?
I think of it as very pure theatre. I don't think of it in relation myself to TV or cinema at all. What my feeling about doing 3 of those plays has been, and in fact seeing your beautiful play this afternoon has been, is that it's a very pure form of what Mike Alfred's called a shared experience. Like, we've all been here for 75 minutes this afternoon, sharing a present tense in a very, very, very pure way. And that's why I thought it was, even though I couldn't have articulated that when I was 19, I somehow knew inside me that it was rubbish to tell me that it wasn't theatre if you didn't break the fourth wall, because actually this feels to me like a very pure form of theatre, you know, us sharing that present tense for that time. So I've never thought of them as being things, and in fact, like, people have asked me to make them into films or TV
Yeah, I
films.
bet they have. I mean, I'm kind of selfishly fascinated. Yeah.
But I just sort of don't allow them, and actually I really had my arm twisted by the National to do End as an NT at home.
Of course,
that the other two weren't done. So, and it's because I suppose I'm quite resistant to the idea of thinking of this kind of work as anything other than theatre in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. This is probably me just like being in pitching rooms trying to like justify like, hey, everyone liked adolescence, it's like that. But yeah, cool. I mean, maybe, yeah, okay, I mean, this is great. This is maybe just, sorry to everyone in the audience, this is me like outing all my concerns. But naturalism can feel like a dated word, maybe, as in like, I'm not a specialist, I didn't do a drama degree, though I wish I'd had. But the birth of it, I think, is sometimes named around like Chekhov. Or Ibsen, who obviously you've done so much adaptation of.
Yeah, maybe it feels more to me that it sort of begins more with Ibsen, really. Yeah, because it's sort of there's a kind of because of the politics went with the commitment to doing the real.
Yeah.
I suppose, but I think probably with Chekhov, then you need Stanislavski so that people can really do Chekhov's plays well and a different kind of acting. But yeah, it is an old form in many ways. But I mean, you know, the theatre itself is I mean, to be pat, but I mean, all of the versions of these different ways that we make plays are all versions of quite old forms, actually. You know.
Yeah, interesting.
And the naturalistic gesture is just one part of the family tree, as far as I would say.
Yeah. Okay. And okay, this is again just me, and I'm going to ask the audience in a second, but bear with me, everyone. There was something for me in the trilogy, beginning, middle, and end, and this is maybe just because I was working in reality and had done some reality TV and documentaries, but that was similar to the kind of voyeuristic experience of looking at real life.
Yeah.
And something my bosses at the time were talking about all the time in the pitching room of like, reality TV is basically, the voyeuristic experience of an audience knowing that something is real, but with all the boring bits left out. And I wondered, like, what do you think it is that audiences enjoy, or do you think about what the real does to an audience in that way? Like, because with the fourth wall up, and I think both Sarah, my director, and I, we've both been told, and especially with the amazing thing she's done putting it in Traverse, it feels quite, apparently audiences have been telling us the voyeuristic element has been turned up. And I don't know, I guess I just wondered, what do you think it is that does to us as humans when we think we're looking at something real?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, I'm not too sure. I mean, I think that I get just thinking about it because it's much harder in a way to talk about my plays than it is yours.
Okay, all right. Fair.
I got very, very wrapped up in all of the telling detail of their lives, so that I think that you are able to focus on different things. Also, I think as well, like so much of drama. We feel like we're kind of being hurried along in some way, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that the audience doesn't lose interest.
Yes.
And actually in this kind of drama, I think part of what's lovely about it is that it can, once you've established some tension in the room, which you do amazingly, and that there's a full subtext, there's a sense that there's all this stuff that's unsaid, then actually you can kind of tell the story in a bit more of a measured way. Which means that you can be kind of fascinated by the play being in the energy of anticipation as an audience, and a kind of anticipation about behaviour much more than like things happening. Do you know what I mean in story terms?
That's so fascinating.
Can I ask you a question?
Please do. Yeah.
How did you write this play?
I probably feel the same as you feel about like how did you write the beginning, but yeah. Can you be more precise? I can ramble if you want me to.
No. I wrote my play beginning. I mean, obviously a little bit differently than I'd done some of my other plays.
Oh yeah.
In that there's a kind of like discrete act, 5-act structure in all of those plays.
I think there really is. I have marked some when reading them, what I think they are.
But like I kind of in many ways planned the plays, certainly on the first draft, a lot less because I wanted the plays to feel real.
Yeah.
So I felt my way with the plays a bit.
Yeah.
So I was just, but that was obviously, that's how I did it. It's not a right way or a wrong way, it's just how I did it. But I was curious watching the play, apart from really enjoying it. Like I was just curious about how you'd literally written it.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, okay, great. Well, I think probably similar to you, I definitely followed the thread of the characters because I wanted to prioritise it feeling real. I think that I started with a lot of my own feelings I wanted to explore around grief and also around kind of the toxicity of, sometimes the toxicity of very, very close female relationships where you can become a little bit codependent. But I was very interested in pressure cooker plays, kind of because I thought they were really difficult. And I'm not saying this to flatter, because I was really profoundly moved by beginning, and I was doing a lot of screen at that point and was like, oh no, actually this is a theatrical experience I really want to give an audience. In terms of like actual process, yeah, I kind of did a vomit draft that was really bad, showed it to a lovely person who helped me see all the really bad things about it. And I guess just kind of kept iterating, but I think probably similar to you, if this is true about you, I'm just assuming it is, but I really know my characters, and Charlie is a character, and Zima is a character, and I think it's about, if you're going to write naturalistic work, you really cannot scrimp. I would argue, I mean, I don't know, I feel the same way about the characters in your trilogy, but do you feel that you get to know them? Do you do that work in a kind of considered way, or does it just kind of come whilst the dialogue and the...
I do. I think that in particular there are just things that I need to know before I write the plays.
Yeah.
So for example, particularly with the final play End, because Alfie has got he's got a colorectal cancer that he's going to kill him, and also because he's a DJ,
which I love.
So I needed to kind of know a lot more about that, know all about that before I wrote the play.
Yeah.
But I did also want, and I think that I did know really important things, like particularly like things like the story of their relationships felt particularly important, like when they had their daughter Annabelle, you know, when she went to university, things like that. But I also sort of was quite reluctant to do too much of it, much as we were saying about how we'd written our plays, because I wanted, certainly on the first draft at least, the fear for it to feel like there'd be almost an improvisatory quality, so that it could feel real and that it really did exist on the moment. I mean, I thought a lot writing these plays. Years ago, I had the good fortune to work with Ian McDiarmid, you know, the Emperor in the Star Wars films. He was in a version of John Gabriel Borkman that I did, and I remember him talking all the time about, you know, the best playwriting goes at the speed of an actor's thought and lives on an actor's breath. And like that is something that I have thought about since working with Ian in the 10 years between doing Borkman and writing Beginning. But when I worked on Beginning and the other plays, it was something I thought about a lot, really, like the plays feeling like they could have a pleasing elasticity so that they could feel properly real and alive.
100%, and I should say that working with the cast, both Catherine and Eileen, and with like Sarah's amazing dramaturgy and direction, it has felt like a kind of, there's been a kind of co-creation of both Katie and Ronnie, because you guys have been so generous, and if you are interested, I think, in naturalism and in, exactly as you say, the speed of an actor's thought, what I think is brilliant about the pleasure of working with fantastic actors, and I wonder if you've had this experience, sometimes when there's a piece of text that I'm quite wedded to, but an actor who I think is astonishing can't quite find a way in performance to do it. For me, that often can mean that the text is wrong, or that I return to the text to kind of rejig, to kind of figure out what is it that's making it difficult. And I think that when you then tweak and you work with an actor, you can then find something very true. I wondered, did you have that kind of R&D process at all? I mean,
yeah, a bit. And I think that is true of lots of plays. I mean, I do think that when you do plays like like this though, or my plays, where there's like there's a massive amount that's alive on stage but kind of isn't necessarily spoken.
Yeah.
That quite often, like we found when we were doing the trilogy plays at the NT, that you'd sort of start off thinking that something didn't quite work, but then when you all got to know it a bit better,
Yeah.
then you sort of realised sort of that you hadn't had a different opinion of it in sort of week 3 than you did in week 1. So
Yeah.
so of course, like I did do work on those plays, you know, where there were things that were quite landing, just as you described, but also there were times as well, I think, when we changed the plays and then changed it back just because you got to know it a bit better. But I think that's only natural with a play like that.
Yeah. I'm so conscious that I'm monopolising. I'm sure there are many audience questions, but I really want to ask about music at some point. But please, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure I understood what you were saying about the speed of an actor's thought.
Yeah, just that you're writing dialogue and actions that feel like they can really exist on the moment and in the present tense in the theatre. You know, like with the quicksilver nature of a kind of a human mind, rather than it feeling like the actors have got dialogue that doesn't quite do that, but they have to make work in some way, I think.
Yeah, and just to kind of counter that, I think there's something about, for me, why I think I like writing naturalistic work is that as a writer there's kind of the classic like kill your darlings, and I think if you're interested in realism, that the killing of your darlings happens almost instantly as soon as an actor. I think actors can tell when the writer's voice is present. Am I making much sense? But so that if an actor is struggling to link the thoughts between two bits of dialogue, that can often be because actually you as a writer are trying to make a character say something that actually the character wouldn't. And yeah, if you're interested in realism, then it's very useful because you're like, oh, okay, that doesn't work.
It's interesting that Paula Vogel, who is for those of you maybe not heard of her before, is a fantastic American playwright, Pulitzer Prize winning playwright, How I Learned to Drive and the Baltimore Waltz. She's also a fantastic teacher of playwriting. And I remember hearing her say once that the only place in a play where the intentions of the writer are to be absolutely explicit is in the stage directions.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. I think that's so beautiful. I mean, yeah, I could keep going for any other audience questions. Please.
So is it quite hard, you know, close time, close space, to kind of keep the momentum going? So for instance, if you look at in Basildon, which is one of my favourite plays, even though that is mostly naturalistic time, you know how you flash back at the end and that gives like an extra, you know, an extra level of understanding. Whereas I presume in close time, close space, is it hard to kind of, do you find it even harder to like put through with, I don't know, little bombs or kind of, you know, keep it going rather than it?
Yeah, you have to keep sort of in some way topping what you've done before. But I think largely they operate through, I think your play was quite like this, if you don't mind me saying, where it's uncovering another layer of truth. That's the kind of the thing that pushes the action of the play forwards. So for me in my 3 plays like this, that's been like, what's this really about? In End, what's it really about? Him not wanting to have any more treatment. It's not really anything to do with cancer in a way. It's to do with the fact that he fucked this other woman and he doesn't feel worthy of his wife's love. But it sort of takes an hour and 20 minutes to get to that, do you know what I mean? Because they can sort of only talk about the cancer at the beginning, you know, in a way. And I think it's actually each sort of, sorry to mix up all the metaphors, but it's another layer of the onion that you're sort of taking off, you know, and those are the things that kick it forward.
I'm smiling because that was exactly the metaphor that my director was very good at using with me in the redrafting process.
But like, that was partly what I thought was so wonderful and fascinating about your play, was I was constantly feeling there's another round of this to go. There's another one, and then another one, and then another one, and that was partly the pleasure of it.
Oh, I'm glad that was. Yeah, I'm glad there was pleasure in that. You have to like this kind of work. Yeah. I don't think I have anything else to offer about that. I think it's about like if you're interested, it's like it's the iceberg. You know, it's like. Yeah. Exactly.
So do you both know like in advance?
Yeah.
Would you plot it enough to be like, I know this has kind of got to happen, then this is going to be the next thing, or do you just kind of almost vomit draft it and like it tends to kind of come naturally?
I guess for me, I was very politically interested in the question. So I kind of began writing this play after my father unexpectedly died and in the wake of Me Too. And so I was very politically interested in the question of men that we are close to who are violent or who sexually assault women, and the difficulty of how we hold that as women. So I always knew that I wanted a friend to be confronted but in her own grief for someone that she loved, that she was lost, about a sexual assault. So that was clear, crystal clear for me from the start, I guess. So the kind of climax was clear, but in terms of how I knew they were going to get there, it was about building almost, for me, quite a detailed character, like building up these whole girls' world and building up him, so that I almost had enough ammunition to then kind of flick and kind of begin to improvise with these characters on the page and see if I could get them to the climax. Is that useful?
Yeah, that's really useful.
Cool.
I sort of did it was a bit different in mine. I sort of had the kind of important bits of, well, I suppose technically you'd call them the turning points or the act breaks, you know, where, so for example, in Middle, like there's a really conventional midpoint or point of no return where Maggie says, that like infers that she may have slept with someone else, that she wants to leave him, and then as in response he smashes every piece of crockery there is in a sideboard, and obviously that's a fairly classic point of no return. There's absolutely no way that's a Rubicon that is crossed in that play. So I knew that. So I would know, for example, that those things are going to happen.
Did you have the image clear? Did you always have the image clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
But I didn't, but whereas in a play like in Basildon, I kind of roughly had worked out what was going to happen every 2 or 3 minutes, like in very crude and bald terms. With the trilogy plays, I just had these great big moments of the play, and I just had to pray that I could get there in a way. They kind of were written a bit differently, like can I get to the canistella in the beginning? I've got some canistella. Can I get to the, what I mean, the fag burn in the carpet? Just hoping, and sometimes I'd sort of make a wrong turn. And then, the next day I'd sort of throw away that work and get back to the last point where it felt really organic and true, and then just try and make that journey again, which is a bit different
feels really similar
than how I'd written before.
Anyone else?
I asked, I can't remember which of you said uncovering the truth is what pushes the play forward. Take your time. I just had a conversation this morning with a writer about how much to write and how much to keep as subtext and how much to leave for the actor to discover. And I don't think there's right or wrong here. But what did you mean about that? Who's pushing the play forward? Who's uncovering the truth? Is that the actors when it gets into the rehearsal room, or?
Well, I think that there's two different. The thing is there's two different types. So there's when the characters know stuff, but that's not explicit, and we sense that as an audience.
Right. Yes.
And then there's also what happens a lot in this beautiful play where they literally are finding out stuff as they go along, aren't they? That they didn't know before, I suppose. So. And I think that like either those moments of revelation for us as an audience, and sometimes we share that moment of revelation for the characters as well, where they're discovering something new in that real time. I think in plays like this, that's largely what's pushing the action of the play forward,
Yes.
largely.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great one of the great playwriting questions. It's like in my working life every day, like what do you give the audience and what do you hold back, and what do the characters give each other and what do they hold back?
Yeah. But that in this play, that was really fabulous when we were learning stuff that they were just learning about each other.
Yeah, we're really in a shared experience, aren't we? There,
Really,
we're really
yes.
sharing a present tense.
Yes.
Yes, that's why it's theatre.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And if it's useful in terms of, you asked about how I wrote it, that was a really, really brilliant, useful note from a previous director who was working on the play, Tamar Safra, who, this maybe sounds crazy given that we're watching what we're watching, I'm looking at a bed full of man's clothes, but actually a lot of the initial drafts of the play were not set in Charlie's bedroom. And something that Tamar Safra said to me was like, let's just go for it, and can we just be in his bedroom? And yeah, it's directors are brilliant, aren't they? Dramaturgs are brilliant. But basically that, like, where can you be that then keeps the discovery, God, I feel really pretentious saying discovery of truth, but like making things active. What if you're going to write close to unclosed space? It's like where's an active place? Yeah.
I do think there is something in though making this kind of theatre that is very deeply connected to like that project of Ibsen's as the father of modern drama, and his kind of this burning, persistent search for the truth that's in all of his great plays.
Yeah.
You know, that when you kind of make this kind of work, it sort of focuses everything on that kind of question in a way. You know, I mean, I wanted to know the truth for every second of that 75 minutes, you know, like that, you know, that was just how it made me feel.
Cool.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was kind of building off of that in regards to subtext and more about the process of writing subtext. When you said like you first wrote a vomit draft, did you start with kind of the key themes and the key sort of emotions and then sort of pair it back with the subtext? So just wondering about the process of that.
This is interesting. I would love to hear your process on this. I think that maybe because I had some work in documentaries, I write subtext quite naturally. I actually have to put exposition into my work. My early drafts are like sometimes incredibly boring because it's just like people talking to each other in naturalistic dialogue. And then lovely people will read it and be like, Zoe, what's happening? And I'm like, this! And I'm like, it's not there, babe. So, but I wonder, how is it for you? I mean, I can then write more vomit drafts where things are bigger and then you can strip them back, but strangely, it's gone the other way for me as a writer. What about yourself?
I think it depends completely on how well the characters know each other.
Yes. Yeah.
So Beginning is a play where the characters don't know each other at all.
Yeah.
So it's sort of all relies on a kind of inferred subtext because they're working each other out and the audience is working out what's going on between them as they're working each other out. Whereas if you've got a play like Middle, where the characters have been together for 16 years, I think, or End, where they've been together for nearly over 30 years, 35 years, something like that, then you're sort of playing a different kind of, like I suppose in Middle and in End, it's much more important in terms of the creation of subtext, the sense of where the characters haven't told each other the whole truth.
Yes.
That becomes much more important when the characters have known each other for a long time, and whereas that's not necessarily relevant at all to Beginning, is it? Because they just don't know each other. So the subtext is created a different way, and it's really different in a two-handed plays like these than in, say, for example, Chekhov. I mean, in Chekhov's plays, they sort of, it's a very broad way of putting it, but the characters sort of talk about something, then one of them leaves, and that creates a subtext that sits under the next conversation that someone comes in and hasn't been party to. Do you know what I mean? I always sort of think that Chekhov's plays are a bit like sort of, you know those bits in Love Island when they say, "Can we have a chat?"
Yeah. Hence my question about reality TV. 100%.
You know, and they like. I mean, that's really what happens in the third act of Uncle Vanya. And part of the pleasure of it is that you're aware of the conversation that the characters aren't aware of, and it's that. But you can't really play that game as a playwright in a two-hander like this or mine at the NT, you know, because you can only create it out of what's going on between the two characters there and then, you know.
I'm so conscious of time, but I think you probably please.
It's not so much a question, but it's an observation. I'm not a writer, so I just, for me, the kind of tactility of it is very important in this case. And I think smart move to put it in the bedroom. I had this sort of Tracy Emin effect for me. Because it's also in the gallery, in the white walls, and the whole sort of, you sort of imagine of what she experienced in that bed. And in the same way, you are obviously showing us a lot what happened after, actually, he's died. But also, as an audience member, you do, I mean, for me, I react quite physically to objects and how they're handled and how it's sort of I mean, it's quite small here, so it makes it even more so, as if you are sort of standing right there in the, you know, in the way I remember that bed of Tracy Emin's, that you have a very visceral sort of experience.
That's so interesting, and I wondered, yeah, obviously, David's plays in the National, was it in the Dorfman actually?
Yeah, all three of them have been in the Dorfman.
All three of them were in the Dorfman, yeah, no, of course they were, yeah. And so, what's it like in a bigger space? Because I think, yeah, the tactility of naturalistic work. Did you think there's a different experience for an audience when they do have more?
Yeah, I mean, of course there is, but you're still just trying to create that sense of us all being in it together, moment by moment. It's just sort of has to be sort of created in a different way. I mean, I think that probably the bigger the space that you're in, the more important those moments of revelation become, because you can't quite rely so heavily on you know, being fascinated by the tiny detail of how one of your wonderful actors handles, you know, a phone or.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell you what really made me think about this, which is also a closed space play, which is Conor McPherson's The Weir.
Yeah.
And because I'm increasingly old, I saw the very first production of that in 1997,
wow.
which was literally just around the bar in an L shape, and there were only there was only an audience of about 70 people on the stage of the Ambassador's Circle. And then when it was sort of a mega hit, they were going to put it in the Duke of York's. And I remember thinking, how's this going to work in here? And actually, in the Duke of York's, actually just the ghost stories just became more important. And then about 2 years later, I saw a touring version of that production in the main house at the Plymouth Theatre Royal. And I thought, this cannot possibly work in here. But it did, and it was just actually that all of the revelations in the storytelling became even more important than they were in the Duke of York. So I'm sure that would be true of your play too, that if you know, and I'm sure you will, see this play, say in a 300 seat or 400 seat theatre, then those moments of revelation will be the moments that really help keep us anchored in it, I think.
Interesting. I'm conscious of last question, and I have a final selfishly I'd love to end on, but please.
I was just going to ask, the trilogy, did you write that in order? The beginning first, the middle second?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. I didn't set out to write a trilogy. I saw.
Really?
Yeah, no. It was on the third preview of Beginning. When I was waiting for the show to start, I just imagined characters that were 10 years older on the stage, rather than the ones that were about to come in. And I just remember thinking, oh fuck. Yeah. But yeah, no, I did do them in order. Yeah.
Well, my selfish final question is, what do you think the future of theatre looks like for naturalistic work?
I think as long as it's good, people will go. I think if people start making very lazy, indulgent, naturalistic work, then people will tire of it and think it's just No more than that, you know, that it's just a kind of, like when the work itself just becomes all about kind of form in a way, then people will get bored with it. I mean, it's sort of, I mean, this stuff does happen. I mean, like the tale, you know, that it's what Dominic Dromgoole calls in his book, like the end of the 80s, early 90s, that affected things that I was told at university, that I think Dominic Drom calls it that ghastly theatre must be theatrical age. I think that felt like a period when the kind of the physical theatre was becoming an end in itself, and it needed something different to come in and shake that all up a bit. And I think if we make kind of naturalistic work that starts to feel lazy and like it should be on television, then there's no future for it in the theatre. But I mean, fortunately, that your play isn't remotely like that. You're offering a wonderful play, and it very much belongs in the theatre and has its life in the theatre. And you know, long may that be the case.
Well, that feels like a very beautiful place to end. Thank you so much.